Hello, Internet, and welcome once again to the Free-to-Play Cast, episode 268. Yes, Jason, it is really episode 268, brought to you by MMOBomb.com, your home for all things free-to-play related. I'm your host, as always, Mike Byrne, a.k.a. Magicman. Also joining me on the line for some topics today, as I've already mentioned, Mr. Jason Winter. How are you, sir?
It's like I actually looked at my old email to see, okay, was the last one 267? Okay, it was. You got this one right. Okay.
I got this one right. It had the little note in it when I made the copy that you put in the show notes last week.
Do you want me to keep doing that? Should I?
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Okay, all right.
Also on the line, Ms. Quinlan Bowers. What's up, Q and friends?
Yeah, it's a revolving zoo at this point, so yeah, I guess she's co-hosting.
All right, we got 4 hosts today, and maybe she'll give us her opinion of some things too, or she'll eat your hair. One or the other is definitely going to happen. Oh, now she's mooning us. Thanks. Oh, that is piercing. That is headphone users are not going to like that. I can tell you that one right now.
Actually her I'm hungry sound, which is hilarious because she literally waited until we started this to come over here and bug me about it.
All right, well, let's get to some news. All right, so we've got a lot of Warframe news today. TennoCon last week, obviously, so we've got a ton of different things to get to there. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about a particular topic that is setting the gaming blogosphere, whatever, on fire, both sides of the debate. Now, last week, when we started our free-to-play cast, this had already started. We're talking, of course, about the whole Guild Wars 2, ArenaNet, dismissing a few employees, that whole fiasco. Now, that had already started. We didn't talk about it on last week's show because there really wasn't much to talk about at that point, Jason. At that point, it was an employee put some stuff on their Twitter, somebody replied, it kind of spiraled, and some people were taking umbrage with it, but that was about it. How things have changed in a week to the point that I feel like, yes, we would be remiss in not talking about the Guild Wars 2 controversy as it is. And so I'm going to put up, Jason, a little basic timeline. Now, here's the thing. Full disclaimer on all 3 of our parts. We'll go through that first. I am not intimately familiar with any of the players in here. Ms. Price, Mr. DeRoyer, anybody else. Inks, I know, comes into this a little bit. I am not intimately familiar with any of them. I don't know them personally, and honestly, until this, I couldn't have told you what Ms. Price does for ArenaNet, and that comes from just not following Guild Wars 2 as closely as some others and being aware of the streamers and the players and the community people and the folks behind the scenes. So that's where my background's coming from. I really didn't know any of these names until all of this. Jason, I think you have some familiarity with a couple of them, right?
Yeah, a little bit more. I mean, Inks being one of the content creators is going to come into this a little bit. He's someone I've gamed with several times in Guild Wars 2, part of a guild with him, so someone I know reasonably well. And Peter Freeze, one of the writers that's going to be involved in all this from ArenaNet, is someone I've chatted with quite a lot on Twitter. So to the extent that I consider us, sort of friendly to the point that you can be with someone on Twitter you've never actually met. But, he's someone I've, if I'm reasonably familiar with. And, Mike O'Brien, the president of ArenaNet, I interviewed him once. I don't think we've ever had any personal contact between that. Just, reporting on stuff he does and so on and so forth. The other people involved are ones I didn't really have any knowledge of or any particular interest of before this whole thing happened.
Q, any familiarity, knowledge, socializing, anything with any of the players we're going to talk about here?
Not recently, but I do know who Inks is from back in my Game Breaker days and stuff like that. I had no idea who Fries was, again, because like you, I don't follow Guild Wars 2, so I had no idea who this lady was, or hi Tez, or who anybody else was. So,
all right.
Tez, do you know any of these people? Bird, Anybody?
Right, so let's
okay.
kind of lay out what happened about a week ago. This was actually happened on 4th of July for the United States holiday. So ArenaNet at that time, it's important to note, Jason, was closed. You know, it was a business holiday when this
Business
happened.
holiday. And something I didn't put in my timeline that I forgot about was the day before they did an AMA on, the day before, maybe 2 days before, they did an AMA on Reddit, which I think Price was a part of, and answered questions and so on, like a typical AMA.
All right, so the first thing that happens is Jessica Price, and what is her correct title here, Jason?
I'd have to look that up again. I don't remember. She was on the writing team. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'd have to look up the article.
Okay.
Hold
So
on a sec.
while Jason's looking that up, we don't want to misconstrue anything here. Get everything as accurate as possible. I know she was involved in writing for ArenaNet. I just want to make sure we get her correct title. So Jessica Price took to her personal Twitter, so it was not an ArenaNet, Guild Wars 2 social media account. It was her personal account. And kind of started a thread about game development, and more specifically about developing the player character in Guild Wars, the commander. Now, she kind of started with, I'm not sure if it's possible to make an MMORPG character compelling, but... And that's where the thread went. And to be fair, she's done this before. She's talked openly about writing and some of the challenges and making things interesting. This isn't the first time she has put her thoughts out there on what she does for a living. In response, Deroyer, which is that somebody that Guild Wars fans would know, Jason?
To some degree, personally, I wasn't aware of him because I don't really follow content creators that much, but he is someone who's done a lot of YouTube videos. He's like an actual partner with them, and he even has an NPC in the game named Deroyer. So Guild Wars 2, ArenaNet themselves have a pretty good idea of who he is.
All right, so this is a known figure. This isn't Mike Byrne coming out of nowhere spouting off about Guild Wars 2. So he responded with kind of some of his own thoughts on how to make commanders compelling and how they maybe could be developed a different way. And now, I think we should stop right there for a minute, because I generally, there's a whole difference between sympathy and empathy, right? I can sympathize with something, but maybe not be able to empathize with it. And an example I think I've used on the show is, somebody that has challenges dealing with schizophrenia or something like that. I can certainly... understand that would be challenging knowing the medical definition of it and everything, but I don't have any contextual reference for being able to understand it myself. And so I look at this kind of the same way. I am obviously a male. I am obviously a white male. The privilege is astounding, and I recognize that. While I can empathize and say, it must be hard to be a woman in general. It might be harder to be a woman in gaming and deal with that harassment. Or in this business front, I can certainly express that it might be challenging, but I don't have the frame of reference to sit there and tell you, yes, I know what that feels like because this happened. That being said, I don't think there was generally anything in Deroyer's reply that kind of came off as even snarky or... particularly misogynistic, or even just attacking on the general sense, Jason. I thought it was somebody saying, hey, you got a lot of good ideas. I think maybe it's, in my opinion, it'd be worth trying this, or this.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I got Jessica Price said she was a game producer. That I got directly from her Twitter right around when this was happening before she was let go. So that's what she called herself, game producer. Deroyer's comment, while it could come across certainly as someone who doesn't know what he's talking about in terms of how to do a game, how to make a game, certainly in comparison to someone who has done that sort of thing for a living for a while, it didn't come across as particularly pointed any way or another. No different than, again, what we see. We see a million times, game developers anywhere, someone saying, hey, your game would be better if X happened or if it was like this or that. That's how I took his initial reply to her thread, especially when she started off by saying, I'm not sure if it's possible, which indicates a kind of uncertainty on her part as to whether this is the right approach. So he responds with, here's what I think the right approach is.
Now, Q, obviously I can't, I don't know what it's like to be in her position and to deal with the, harassment she maybe dealt with on other topics. We with Total Biscuit and stuff, I know there was a whole thing with Ms. Price a while ago with that. I don't know. I want to give the benefit of the doubt and say, you know, she's dealt with this kind of stuff so often that it's hard sometimes to maybe see honest feedback as honest feedback and not as an attack, because social media sucks, Q.
I mean, you know, in a lot of ways it does. You're technically limited on how you say things. People aren't really good at expressing themselves in writing, things like that. But her complaint was that he was mansplaining.
Yes.
It wasn't that he was actually being actively sexist, because mansplaining, if everybody's not entirely familiar with the idea, and I know a lot of people think it's, you know, bullshit or whatever, but the idea of mansplaining is that it's a much more passive thing.
Right.
Men just think they know better than women. And I get it. Because I'll say something on my Twitter or something, and I'm not really asking for help. I'm not actively saying, hey, can you guys help me figure this out? I'll say something about something my computer is doing. And I know how to operate my computer. I know, you know, I've taken programming classes. I've built my own computer. I know how to computer. You know, but I'll say, well, I'll actually say I've done this, this, and this. I guess I'm going to have to do this next. And then I'll get a litany of tweets, you know, from guys wanting to help that are like, well, but did you try this? Did you try this? Did you try this? And it's like, I already said what my plan was. I was just venting.
Right.
You know?
Did you turn it off and on again?
And I realize it comes from a place of good, you know, like people, and it's not just guys that do it either, but it does seem to be more predominant, especially in tech industries and stuff, where they're like, well, you know, she doesn't know, right? Like, she doesn't know because and it's like, well, yeah, except I've been a nerd longer than most of y'all, so.
Great points, thank you, because I think up until this point, Jason, I don't think anybody's done anything wrong. I don't fault DeRoyer for putting some opinions out there. And particularly the way that he did it, I thought that was fine. And you know what? I don't even fault Ms. Price for maybe viewing it in a different way than some other people would view it, having to deal with some of the things that she's had to deal with in that profession, and other women have to deal with. All the women's is, for God's sakes. Blah, 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 blah. So I don't think up until that point, I don't even fault Ms. Price for feeling that maybe she was mansplained too. The problem came after that, I think. And when Price responded and was a bit snarky, again, not overly aggressive or anything, but definitely a little snarky, to which DeRoyer apologized. Again, maybe a little passive-aggressively. I mean, we're hitting a
little bit more even.
Yeah, we're hitting a lot of gray areas here, where now you have two people that I kind of think are trying to get under each other's skin. You know, Price barbed, maybe a little passive-aggressively, a little snarky. DeRoyer obviously saw that it was a little passive-aggressive and snarky and kind of upped the passive-aggressive and snarky back. And then Price kind of quote tweeted him with "today and being a female game dev" comment. And so now we're beyond passive-aggressive, snarky, or, you know, gray area. It has fully gone to, this is the way I'm taking it, and it's wrong. And it kind of blew up from there, Jason.
So what I keep thinking is, I've looked at this over like the past week or so and sort of tried to get an impression of everything. And almost at every juncture, I'm finding myself thinking of that one comic that you see on the internet, like someone's typing away at their computer and someone off screen is saying, "It's 3 a.m. Won't you come to bed?" And the other person is saying, "No, someone on the internet is wrong." And I think there's like multiple cases where multiple people involved in this should have just stopped. Just stop. I know that means the other person wins the internet points, but maybe you should have just held back, said, all right, say in your head this person's an a-hole, and then just stop typing, step away from the computer or whatever. That didn't happen from multiple people. I kind of feel like DeRoyer maybe should have done that after the initial like rebuff by Price. Really feel like maybe she should have done it instead of the female game dev thing, because that was what exploded everything.
Right. That was the fuse. Yeah, that was where then after that, I don't doubt that she's got a lot of really unpleasant kind of commentary from that. She and the other person we'll talk about in a bit, they've gotten a lot of that sort of thing.
After that point, I certainly don't blame you for blowing up on someone and saying, get the hell out of here.
Right.
But maybe things should have been worded a little differently, or maybe otherwise stepped away from or walked away in a way that would have not made the whole thing explode.
Yeah, and Q, this is kind of where, obviously now at this point, everybody involved in this situation has detractors that are slamming them, and people that are on their side that are slamming each other. Now it's everybody's starting to choose sides. Hey, his comment was just general feedback. It wasn't snarky. It had nothing to do with you being a woman. Oh, this was just another man explaining to a female employee why she was wrong, or mansplaining things to her. That was the point that when these two started escalating it, all right, now everybody started choosing sides. And you know what? I don't think even on this podcast or anything, I don't think we're going to change anybody's mind, right? You're on whatever side of this you're on as far as the facts and what happened and were intentions from Ms. Price or DeRoyer, right, wrong, whatever. And I don't think any of the three of us are out to change your mind. I can see both sides of this. Jason, what you're saying I kind of agree with. Maybe either one of them walks away. DeRoyer going, oh, you know what? That was not taken the way I meant it. I'm sorry, mea culpa, end of discussion. Or that action taken from Ms. Price's sides. Then we had another Guild Wars employee, ArenaNet employee in Peter. It's pronounced Freeze, isn't it?
Freeze, yeah.
Freeze. Yeah. Peter Freeze, kind of chiming in on Ms. Price's side of everything, and it just got really messy from there. Q.
Yeah, and like DeRoyer, he did try to apologize, but it's one of those things too.
Yeah, but it was passive aggressive.
Right. Well, it's one of those things where I think his feelings were hurt, so he just kind of and he was trying to explain. Like when I was reading it, I was getting, okay, dude's feelings are hurt. He's trying to tell her his feelings are hurt. But when you have somebody come at you like that, your best bet is to just be like, you know what? Okay, cool. Obviously, this didn't go the way I intended. I'm just going to give you some space. And maybe we can address it later. And again, too, I don't know that in this case, there was someone today, right, that Jason linked where a male author was talking about how he just figured out men could mansplain to men. So I guess you could still view it as mansplaining. But, come on. As far as the female...
He just figured that out? Have you seen two guys at a barbecue? Put two guys and a grill there. I guarantee you're doing it wrong, according to the other guys.
But the point being that how many male devs have players come out with that same kind of feedback, right? Or even worse, right? It's not necessarily being a female dev. It's being a dev with a bunch of people who think they could do your job because they've played the games.
Right.
And like me, I'll sit there and be like, well, it would be really cool if they could do this, but I have no idea how they do it. It's like somebody trying to figure out how the president would do his job. And although right now...
And Jason, you've made the point in all the documents we put together for this, you've made almost that exact same point, right? Game devs, male or female, or anything in between, they always face criticism and nastiness and vitriol from the internet 24/7 because gamers everywhere that telling them they could do the job or make the game better. And was that this? Or was it something else, something more directed at Ms. Price happening to be a female employee?
One thing that's come up is that between the AMA and this whole thing going down, apparently DeRoyer did a video or Twitch stream or something where he talked about how great Jessica Price was and how much he admired her work and what they did on what she did on AMAs. So certainly he did not have any malice directed towards her. Didn't want to get her fired or set off anything. So I don't think that part of it is a factor.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to I want to give everybody the best of intentions and not, unless proven otherwise by something they directly do or say. It's just a messy situation, and it just didn't get any better because July 5th then came. You know, and all by this time, there's posts on Reddit, there's articles on news sites, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of comments. We put up the initial news, and then we kind of stayed away from it because we thought it was going to be a blurb, so we covered the news. We thought that was going to be the end of it, and then it really blew up, and we figured the best place to talk about it is the free-to-play cast, where we, instead of you reading our words, you can hear our inflection, see our face. Hopefully, we get our ideas and personal opinions across, because I think there is validity to the question, Q, of would Ms. Price's reactions have been different if Doror had happened to be female? I don't know. I don't want to speculate. It's a hypothetical, but I think it is a question worth at least considering for a moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of a good question, and I honestly have no idea how she would respond to it. I do know that because of this happening, a lot of people were trudging up, things that she had said before, incidents at previous employers, stuff like that. So it's a case of I don't know. Maybe she's just I don't know the lady. She could be one of the nicest ladies ever, or she could just be one of those people that just doesn't do well with people or whatever. And it may not have mattered at all. Who it was.
So we hit the 5th, and now the powder keg is about to explode when Mike O'Brien, head honcho over at ArenaNet, fires both Ms. Price and Mr. Freeze. Now, it should be important to note... Thanks, Jason.
Mr. Freeze.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah.
It should be
Just
worth...
call him Peter. He'll be fine with it.
It should be worth noting that to date, I don't believe Jessica Price has deleted any of those tweets or taken them down, right? They're still there.
I haven't looked at her Twitter that much, so I don't really know. But there's been I've not seen anybody mentioning that it happened. Unlike, say, with Peter,
whose tweets were taken. He did remove
some of his tweets. Yeah.
Right. And now, again, we have to interject a gray area here. So it's very easy to look at this at surface level and say these two were let go specifically and only as a result of this particular situation, this public situation on July 4th. But we don't... The gray area is we have no idea what happened in the meetings. Now, we get a little bit of insight from she said, he said type stuff a little later, but we didn't have this on the 5th yet. Right. At that point, we have no idea if these meetings were come in, sit down, you're fired, and there is no discussion. We're not talking about anything. Peter, come in, sit down, you're fired as well. Goodbye. Please clean out your desks. We don't know if they were, more argumentative, if they blew up, if there were options given to Ms. Price or Peter. We have no idea at that point how those meetings went at all. We just know that the result of those meetings is that both were fired from ArenaNet. And that's what kicked off an even more divisive pick a side. Should they have been fired for posting things on their own personal Twitter accounts, or they shouldn't have been fired? They should have been given a warning, a slap on the wrist, be forced to apologize, that type of thing. And we've seen both of those. And Jason, I know you have a particular point on this you'd like to make, and we'll see if Q and I go with you on that one.
I've got many, but I guess we'll start with the basic one being, the question of should they have been fired for posting something on their personal account, off work hours, whatever. And the notion I have here is it's a possibility. It's a risk you take. And I say this because this applies to any kind of communication, basically. And the notion that it's your private account, yeah, okay, it is the account you set up and have your name on, whatever. Whether you put in your bio, employee of ArenaNet or whatever, or so on, you are still speaking this to the world. You're speaking it to potentially thousands of people, putting your opinions out there. The kind of old school equivalent I give it was something like sending a letter to the newspaper as like an op-ed or a letter to the editor or something like that. If I did that and say 10,000 people read the newspaper and my name is signed at the bottom, Jason Winter, employee of MMOBomb, and I put something crappy in there that maybe Mike or Luis don't really agree with, think is a terrible viewpoint, or even, you could think of all sorts of ridiculous,
or in general just reflects badly on us as a business by having you here.
Yeah, even though I'm writing it on my personal time, I don't reference my job or anything, even then, one of you could come to me and say, "Hey, we need to have a little chat about this," and whether you should still be with the company. Now you add in the fact that Price was talking about work. That's kind of an extension of the AMA, which was something done on work hours, and had in her bio that, hey, I'm an employee of ArenaNet. That makes it even muddier. That makes it even a little more leaning a little more towards the representing the company as opposed to representing my personal views kind of thing. But even if it was just a representing my personal views, if those views are toxic enough or abhorrent to your employer, there is the possibility that you could be let go. And again, you could think of anything. I could tweet out something, and I'll let you leave it to you to what sort of awful, ridiculous, racist, whatever thing I could tweet out. If I did that, Mike or Luis would talk to me and say, "Okay, we need to have a little chat. I know it's your personal Twitter or whatever. We're gonna have a chat about this." And you still being at MMOBomb. So
the most common example we've seen in mainstream media, of course, is the like the riots in
Charlottesville.
Yeah, Charlottesville, where some vile things were chanted by a number of people walking with torches and pikes and things like that, and people did lose their job for showing up in that footage. Jason, I kind of get the vibe from you is if you're okay with one, then you better be okay with the other, right?
Yeah, you can't unilaterally say you can't be disciplined by your work for something you say on Twitter, basically.
Q, where do you fall on this?
I mean, there's a reason why ever since I, started working at GameBreaker or, Game Skinny here at MMOBomb, I don't go spouting off a million opinions, because there's some things that a lot of people might not agree with and other people will. But if I look at it as, well, I have MMOBomb in my profile and I don't want to cause any trouble for the people that I work for, if I say something. And like, Jason was saying, the whole hush Tez, the whole thing of, like you mentioned Charlottesville as the most recent case of people being fired for stuff they do and say outside of work. And if you go and just look on the internet right now, in the last month, there have been like 4 or 5 people fired for just being assholes outside of work. The most recent one I read about was a guy who got fired because he tried to police a woman who was using the neighborhood pool and called the police on her and everything, and was still being a jerk even after the police were like, "No, she's fine." And people went and found his LinkedIn profile, figured out where he worked at, and he was gone. Or Papa John's.
Oh, God.
Well, he was on a work call, though. Papa John was up representing the company on a work call.
Yeah,
so
that one's a little different, and let's just stay away from that dude entirely for right now. Totally different topic for a different time.
People get fired for things they say. And as far as the we don't know what went down thing, right? We don't know what might have been going down for a while. They might have not just fired her, them solely based on this one incident. There might have been incidents within the company that they've been keeping track of for a while, and they finally went, well, okay, we kind of been letting it ride, but this one was public, so it's done.
I don't know, Jason. I kind of disagree with you a little. Like, I agree with you in theory. I disagree with you when we start getting into, the extreme portions of that type of train of thought. I think there's obvious differences, at least in my own head, to somebody spewing racial hate and inciting violence being fired from their employer when that's found out, versus somebody talking about their job on Twitter and somebody chiming in and those two getting into a spat of some type over what they're discussing. I feel like I feel like there's certain validity in those two situations being treated differently.
I mean, the thing I'm trying to make is that some people were saying you shouldn't be fired straight up for something you say on personal Twitter. That was the point they were trying to make. I don't agree with that. Again, you could take it some extremes.
Isn't there a point, though, where it's like none of us can say anything? You can't say anything because it might piss off. If it pisses off one person, you'll probably be fine. But as the number gets incrementally bigger and bigger and bigger, your employer takes notice. Like, one of the things was these people only got fired because of how big this got on Reddit. Oh, we have Mr. O'Brien clarifying after the case that no, that is not. It was not a reaction to Reddit and what happened there. We already had plans to go in and address this before it even became a really big thing on Reddit. Doesn't that just... there are aspects of my social media is my social media. And yeah, if I'm using a bunch of horrible language to chastise or demean other people or to... There's a difference between that and me and Jason, or Jason and I getting into a fight about which one's a better writer publicly and us getting vocal about it.
But the difference is, stop, Tez. The difference here is, I think because the topic was something related to work, she at that point was she was representing her job because she was starting a conversation. Or actually, I guess from the way she responded, it wasn't really intended to be a conversation, right? But when it's about something that, tons of people are emotionally invested in, expecting them to respond to it as a conversation's a little foolish.
Well, to that point, Jason Price did do an interview later where one of the answers she gave was about that type of idea. You were talking about work. You were talking about something you do for work on your public Twitter. It's a little different than you just talking on your public Twitter. And her quote is, "They framed an interaction on my personal..." They being ArenaNet in this quote, I assume, Jason, right?
Yeah.
Framed an interaction on my personal social media in which I told a few individuals who I thought were being assholes that I wasn't on the clock and I wasn't going to feign affection for people who are being assholes, like community managers have to do on a daily basis, and all gaming employees in general. They framed them as attacks on the community. And that's a sticky situation because, again, just like this started, I can see both sides. I can see Jessica saying people being dicks on my Twitter. I'm not on the clock. I don't have to be nice to you because you're customers. Please go away. And I can see ArenaNet saying, yeah, it was on your personal Twitter, but you were clearly talking about us to the community, about what you do, about what you write for us. And so lashing out at a couple people you thought were just being jerks comes off as chastising the entire community. It's one of those situations where it just sucks. I can't look at it personally, and maybe this is me sitting on a fence. I don't care. Accuse me of what you want. I can look down from that fence and see both sides of that argument and understand why it might be hard to agree or disagree with one or both sides, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with her that, if she thinks people are being assholes, she should be able to respond in kind.
Yeah.
The question is, were people being assholes to her? At least in the initial stuff Devorah said. Maybe a little bit like another content creator, Inks, kind of got his way in, tried to explain what he thought was going on, which again goes back to my original point. I think Inks just shouldn't have done it. He should just let someone on the internet be wrong if that was his point of view, not gotten involved, but he did. And then he got a little chewed out by Jessica Price. So yeah, the question is, were these people assholes? According to, and in fact, she even used the term rando asshat at one point, but she later said she would change to condescending jerk because she thinks ArenaNet had an issue with that term rando asshat. So were they?
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, well, if they were that, if people are being jerks to you on the internet, go ahead and fight back. I don't really have a problem with that. The question is, was that what was happening originally? She apparently thought that was the case and responded as she should probably to that kind of thing. The big question is, was that the case? Yeah, and that's where we get some interpretation.
Right, and we saw opinions all over the board. They should have been fired. Yeah. They should not have been fired. She being Ms. Price, should have been fired, but Peter Fries should not have been fired. He just chimed in defending a coworker, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the opinions ran the gamut of everything you can imagine. And then there was the people that were of the thought of, you know what, I don't care who was fired. I'm not going to chime in on whether they should or shouldn't be, but I'm going to say they were only fired because a Reddit mob demanded blood. And again, hard not to agree with them, at least that having that perception, and say it's a fine perception they had, because we saw ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2 do exactly that on other things that were related to the game. Mount licenses, the gem issue they had. They changed their policies there because the customers reacted in a very strong manner against it. Is this situation similar? I could see people wondering that. And so in an attempt to clear some things up, we did get an additional statement from Mike O'Brien after the fact to clear up at least some of these. Now, from what Jessica Price says, Jason, please correct me if I'm wrong, she, from her perspective, was not given much of a discussion opportunity when it came to this meeting. It was more, come in and it was over.
Yeah, one of the first things, when this first broke, someone asked me on Twitter, like, what's your opinion of it? And I said, I'm going to reserve judgment on that until I hear, if I do hear anything about what happened in any meeting that took place. That's kind of a big point to me. Since then, we have heard some things. So Jessica said that people in that meeting were her, Mike O'Brien, someone from HR, and some, I don't remember what it was, not her direct supervisor. Her direct supervisor was on vacation, 4th of July, so he was not there. But some other like person in her department of a higher stature or whatever, maybe the head of her department or whatever. So those were the 4 people she's identified as being in that meeting.
That seems pretty typical with this type of situation.
Okay. She said that she was not given a chance to defend herself.
I'm just saying, from the business world, that makes sense to me. That the person making the decision, that person's immediate available boss and HR, that doesn't seem like anybody inappropriate is in the room. Yeah,
it does not indicate that. I think there's no indication that Peter Fries was a part of that. He might have had his own separate meeting or whatever. So just talking about Price right now. She said she did not have a chance to defend herself. And then Mike O'Brien, I don't know what the word she used exactly, something like he railed against her or he talked about how disappointed he was, something along those lines. Sorry if I'm not getting the exact word right, but the feeling she got, that she has expressed, is that Mike O'Brien seemed disappointed in how she was. Now, what I thought was, okay, if he called her into the office and said, okay, that's it, you're fired, that's kind of crappy on his part. I feel like she should have had some chance to explain herself, some chance to give her side of the story. She did not say that occurred. In his additional statement, Mike O'Brien has not said that occurred. He might just be omitting it. Maybe something like that did happen, but you'd think that it would be good of him to bring that up if it did happen. So the fact that he didn't bring it up sort of leads me to think that that sort of thing didn't happen. She didn't have the chance to defend herself, as she put it.
And I will say this, in this queue, this is just me coming from a very business-heavy background from the time I was like 16 forward. I run the gamut of setting pins at bowling alleys all the way to being regional VPs for Fortune 500s. Divisions, I should say, of Fortune 500s. I wasn't that high up. It was a VP of a certain division of Fortune 500s. I can tell you, and I don't know ArenaNet's internal policies. I don't pretend to. I am just speculating based on my personal business experience over 20-some years. When you go into a meeting and your direct supervisor and HR is there, the decision's already been made. To me, in my own personal experience, the decision has already been made. There are very few, if any, situations I can think of, and I've had some crazy shit that I've had to fire people for. You wouldn't believe it, but generally, I only have HR present, actually physically present, for 2 reasons. One, I'm concerned with delivery, and maybe I'm a bit concerned with how things are going to be taken, both on my side, the employee side. Let's make sure we're all just covering our asses and do this the right way with some witnesses. Or the decision is already made. If not, HR is somebody I consult with after I speak to Jessica. And again, it may be totally different for ArenaNet, and they may have policies that dictate these people had to be there no matter what the type of situation is. But in my experience, if I wanted Jessica's side of this, if I'm Mike O'Brien and I wanted Jessica's side of this and I wanted to have a discussion about it to make a decision, HR probably would not have been there initially. It would have been Jessica and her supervisor. We would have talked about it. consulted with HR, and then come back. I don't know if any of you have different experience, and if ArenaNet has different policies, fine. That's my own personal experience, Q.
I mean, I don't have the corporate experience that you have. My long-term work experience was basically, service industry. And the only thing I know, from working in the service industry since I was like 14 is that in a lot of cases, if you look at a customer wrong, you will get fired. So, I mean, to me, someone getting fired for not, for interacting with a customer, and that's what they are, right? Like, yeah, we do the whole, we're a community and stuff with game development. They're customers at the end of the day. And if you're interacting with a customer or several customers in a way that's going to lose your company money, they're probably going to get rid of you. I mean, like I said, obviously food service is a much smaller microcosm. Like, I've worked in places that have had 12 employees. I've worked in places that have had hundreds of employees. And it really comes down to, if you do anything that's going to reflect badly on us, that's going to get these people coming in here complaining to us, you're gone. Just straight up. That's the way it is. And so I'm kind of used to this idea of this is probably what happened, and again, maybe not because of the Reddit mob, because I don't know if I were running it, if I would look at Reddit as a gauge necessarily of
there's something to be said when you have 5,000-6,000 comments and upvotes and things like that, though.
Right. But you would also look at how they're commenting and stuff like that, right? Like, somebody might come in and have a complaint against a cashier for something that you wouldn't necessarily fire them for. Because there's some customers that are just complete asses. They make an ass of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the feed, right? Because everything's on camera now. You look at the feed, you see what they did. But if you're if somebody comes in with valid complaints about, the customer giving sass, just being lazy, or not customer, but the cashier, like doing whatever it is that reflects badly on the company, they're gone. Like, there's no discussion. It's just, you're out.
And what if 100 people come in and complain about the cashier?
Oh God! If 100 people, like, did something happen that day?
Well, that's basically what we have when we talk about a 5,000 thread on Reddit. It's 100 people complaining about the cashier. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the only reason I bring up my own personal experience there is because it does make me feel like Jessica Price is probably right in the way she felt that meeting went. Again, it may not be. They may have their own policies, but the way she describes it, I didn't have a chance. There was no defending myself. There was no talking about this. I was basically gone from the minute I walked in the door. The way that meeting is described to me in my own personal experience, I kind of fall on her side of that. That's probably exactly what happened there.
It's interesting to know, too, in the past week or so, I've seen several people, including some former ArenaNet employees, basically come out and say, yeah, Mike O'Brien likes appeasing to the Reddit mob.
Right.
Like, he likes to win points for that. And I can actually remember about 3 or 4 years ago, there was an interview with some foreign language site. I think it happened during Gamescom, so I think the people were there. A couple of developers talked about some stuff, and they came across really badly. Not in a, hating the fans kind of thing, but just in a sort of, in a feeling, it felt like they didn't know what the community wanted in terms of the game. That got a lot of people talking on social media and various other things and so forth. About 3 days later, their communications head was let go from the company. Now, he was not, personally attacked or anything like that, but I get the impression that he was involved in letting that interview go through and was let go there because of how poor that interview went. So maybe that's a sort of similar case of maybe ArenaNet did appease the Reddit mob, so to speak. I mean, Mike O'Brien did give into that again, so...
Well, luckily he released a statement that kind of touches on that topic, or at least attempts to. And I'm going to read the statement in full here, so I apologize. We'll cut away from my co-host just for a second. Jessica has identified herself as an ArenaNet employee on Reddit and Twitter, had been discussing Episode 3 storytelling with fans on Reddit, then written a 25-part tweet about how we tell stories in MMOs, relating it back to Episode 3. She was representing the company. The expectation was to behave professionally and respectfully, or at least walk away. Instead, she attacked. Concerns have been publicly raised that she was responding to harassment. It's not my place to tell employees when they should or shouldn't feel harassed. In this case, however, our employees could have chosen not to engage, and they could have brought the issue to the company, whereby we would have done everything we could to protect them. We'll come back to that thought in a second. We won't tolerate harassment. When an employee feels harassed, we want them to bring the issue to us so that we can protect the employee, deal with the issue, and use it to speak to the larger issue of harassment. Whenever Jessica and Peter felt internally about the situation, this was objectively a customer engaging us respectfully and professionally, presenting a suggestion for our game. Any response from our company needed to be respectful and professional. A perceived slight does not give us license to attack. We've all dedicated our careers to entertaining people, to making games for the purpose of delighting those who play them. We generally have a wonderful relationship with our community, and that's a point of pride for us. We want to hear from our players. It's not acceptable that an attempted interaction with our company, in this case a polite game suggestion, would be met with open hostility and derision from us. This sets a chilling precedent. The tweets were made on July 4th, when the studio was closed for the holiday. We were aware of them that day and decided we need to take action in the morning. The fact that the community's anger was escalating on July 5th could make it look like our action was a response to the community's anger, but that wasn't the case. We took action as soon as we...
Practicably? I don't know.
As soon as we could, is what he was trying to say.
Yeah, as soon as we could. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's an interesting non-word that's used there. And now I'm throwing that in Miriam to see if maybe this is capable of being affected, done, or put into practice, feasible. So, synonym, as soon as we feasibly could. I hate to let an employee go. I wish the best for Jessica and Peter, as for any former employee, in whatever they choose to do next. Whatever you thought of the tweets, Jessica and Peter were also part of the team that brought you the kidnapping scene in Episode 1, which was a wonderfully well-executed scene. That's how I want to remember their time at ArenaNet. Q, your initial thoughts to Mr. O'Brien's reply?
I mean, if the timeline and everything is right, then it was just a thing where a decision had already been made on the 4th, and they just waited till the 5th to tell them and whatever. But it is in conjunction with what Jason has already said about it. Just kind of seems like ArenaNet has a habit of letting people go after Reddit gets mad. It's a little hard to tell there. I mean, who in that case is in the right or in the wrong. But again, like I've said, there's so much that we don't know about what goes on behind the scenes that it's just really hard to tell. And he is right in that responding to customers who, even if they're being irritating or trying to be nice, responding to them in an aggressive way is not the way to do business.
Jason, this has predictably led to... now the emboldening of certain smaller groups of people feeling like they can ransack employees of other companies or their favorite games, and the counter view of, because ArenaNet has done so, I'm going to boycott their products because I feel like they have emboldened these communities and done the wrong thing. And then the counter view to that of the ArenaNet was absolutely in the right here. I mean, it just further divide with everybody picking a clear side. And you know what? I know it's frustrating, but it comes down to, at the end of this, am I going to boycott ArenaNet? Probably not. But is that any real big deal for me? I don't play Guild Wars 2 all that often anyway, so a boycott from me doesn't make sense anyway. But the reason that I probably wouldn't is I think both sides were right and wrong in all steps of this. And at the end of the day, did somebody overreact to a comment? Maybe. I can see you believing that. Did somebody overreact to that person's comment? That somebody being a company? Maybe. I can see all of these points. I don't have all the details. I think I have enough to make my own personal decision and say a bunch of people acted in stupid ways here that maybe should have just walked away at different points. I don't know. Is that me being too logical about it, Jason, or am I just an asshole for fence riding on this one?
No, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I think when this first started out, I said I'm going to wait a while. I like, okay, I think here's how I think of, good versus bad. Here's how I think of one side of it. Here's how I think of another side of it. And since this has been going on, like, I've been flipping this one a little this way, a little bit this way. And now I'm kind of like, they've all really screwed up. Like, just about all sides of this have done something they shouldn't have done at some point. And maybe the reaction, like you said, the reaction of one to the other is maybe swayed that in another direction, made them look bad in reacting in the way they did. I have trouble finding an innocent party here, but at the same time, I have trouble finding anyone I would just instantly maybe toss out the door. Right? You're not wrong. I feel pretty much the same way that you do.
Q?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just what started out, I think, as one huge misunderstanding between two people and just ended up involving pretty much the entire internet. And when you get that many people involved in anything, it's just going to be a big mess anyway. Now, as for the people who are absolutely now convinced that they could get any employee they want ever fired, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Really?
Let me. I have to interrupt her with a couple things on that. First of all, the guy who wrote that, you've probably seen that Reddit thread now, where a guy
that one was satire, but that's not the only one out there, though.
Yeah, true. Well, yeah, but that's the one that gets primary noted. It was satire. It got downvoted to hell. It's fake. That is not that is not the belief of the person who posted it, at the very least. Other people do agree. Yes, I will admit.
Not just that people agree, but people are actually reporting people who work not just at game companies, but there have been people I've seen reporting, hey, people now are just spam emailing my boss trying to get me fired because they don't like the stuff that I say on Twitter. And it's started happening after the ArenaNet thing. So there are people who are like, well, this one person got fired and we obviously did it, so let's get other people fired.
Yeah.
Really, guys, does that make sense? If you get everybody fired, who the hell is going to make your games?
Yeah,
straight white dudes.
Oh God,
that's the desire, basically.
I just have a few things for me, and we'll close this topic with your two final thoughts. One, if you belong to that mob that think it's okay to do any of this stuff maliciously and intentionally, and I don't want to put that on DeRoyer. From what I read, I don't think that was his intent. Maybe it was, and I'm just misreading it, but I don't think that was his intent. But for those of you that do that shit, knock it off. You're a terrible person. Fix it. Don't do it. Just shut up. And if you feel the need because she happens to be female, she has ovaries, therefore she can't write, shut up. Anyway. And if you belong to those groups where you think, hey, let's band together because we don't like this employee or what they said, this little 2 sentences thing over here, shut up! Get off the damn computer. Also, I do have something I want to say to ArenaNet, though. And more specifically, to something Mike O'Brien said that I said we'd get back to, Jason. It is all well and good to say we want to protect our employees. We want to address harassment as a bigger issue. We want them to come to us so that we can do this. If you have not created the internal community where those employees feel safe and able to do so, then you cannot say that with a straight face. I've never worked at ArenaNet. I don't know what the case is there. But I would say, if you are going to make a statement like that, every single one of your employees, male, female, anything in between, and all of their dogs that come to the office, all the cats that come to the office, they better tell me when I say, would you feel safe going to your employer and asking them to shield you from a harassing issue, they better say yes. Or don't you dare say that in a statement. Just my thoughts. Jason, we'll let you finish with your thoughts. Q, we'll wrap it up with you and talk some Warframe.
It should be noted too, interestingly, in his statement, he says, she should have gone to them immediately to let them know. And then also, it was on July 4th and we were closed. We couldn't do anything until the 5th.
Right.
So,
yeah. She should have come to us immediately. We didn't come to her immediately to
we
fire
were closed,
her.
so she can't come to. Yeah,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is there. Yeah, like there's mistakes on all sides. Yeah, and just I'd say to someone else out there, if you're ever going to comment on someone when they're on Twitter or any other sort of thing, think about what you're saying sometimes. Don't just tweet out the first 280 characters that come to your mind. Think about what you're writing. Think about the effect it's going to have. And if you don't think you can say it properly in 280 characters, don't say it at all. You don't have to. There's no law that requires you must respond to someone on Twitter. So
Q.
just look at it that way.
Actually, I really like that point. Also, if you do feel attacked by people on Twitter and they happen to be your employer's customers, just go ahead and mute them. You don't have to respond to them. You can just mute them or say, "Hey, bro, not today," without getting aggressive yourself.
Yeah, I know, but then to me that treads on the whole. I shouldn't have to. That shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right, you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to. But let's face it, people have opinions, and they think their opinions are glorious, whether everybody else does or not, and they're gonna try to share them with you.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like
I know.
it's just gonna happen.
That just gets dicey for me. That's like, hey, Jason, you're getting harassed on Twitter, and it's your fault because you didn't block them. No, it's not Jason's fault.
We're not talking about though necessarily being harassed there. That was the thing. She wasn't being harassed at first. He made a comment. It wasn't a comment she wanted to deal with. She could have blocked, or she could have muted it, or just ignored him, and it would have been fine. That's the thing. There wasn't harassment in that statement. It was, I would say, the whole mansplaining thing. Like I said, I get exasperated with people trying to explain things to me too, and I don't really want their opinion. But at the same time, most of the time,
let me interrupt you here. Let me interrupt you and tell you why you're wrong here. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so it's one of those things like. And especially since she was the one whose job was at risk, like it kind of makes it more of a thing where if she just walked away and just left it for a day, told them, hey, I don't know how to handle this the next day, whatever, she wouldn't have lost her job. And I realize that's a lot to put on her. But at the same time, it's Twitter, guys. Like, you don't have to respond to everything that everyone says to you.
Jason, this prompted you to ask me, hey, is your day job the reason why? Because my personal Twitter is private.
That's right.
I got it all locked down. And Jason, after all this, he said, by the way, out of curiosity, I've noticed yours has been like that. Is that why? And no, it's not because of my job or anything. I don't say anything that I'm worried about getting fired for. There's nothing that I say on my Twitter that I wouldn't say if it were public Twitter. It's just for the reason Q was kind of given there. I hate assholes. So I'd love for you to follow me, but if you're going to be an asshole, then you're not going to be able to follow me. It's easier for me that way. So go ahead. Sorry.
Really quick, funny story that actually ties into this a little bit. You know who J. Michael Straczynski is?
Yes.
The guy who created Sense8 and Babylon 5? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's very active on Twitter. He's apparently been very active on the internet since the days of CompuServe. He will get right in there in the trenches with people. But he and I were having a discussion the other day because somebody said something. I don't really know what it was, but somebody said or did something, and he just blocked him. And he was discussing the blocking thing versus the muting thing. And he actually actively blocks people to protect his followers from having to see what they say. But he makes use of the tools that are given to him because he is bombarded like on a daily basis with, assholes in addition to the nice people who just really want to interact with the guy who wrote some of their favorite shows and comics. So, I mean, it's one of those things. Sometimes you just have to use the tools that you're given.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. Obviously, I use them personally, but when it comes to after the fact, I think there's a danger of saying, that shifting the blame and almost blaming the person that, well, why didn't you just block them? Well, why weren't they just not an asshole? How about that? Let's just do that. Anyway, let's move on to something more cheery. And I'd like to say we'd love your opinions on this topic. But it is YouTube. How about this? The free-to-play cast and MMO bombers in general, you're very, very good people in general. If you have opinions on there, fine, put them in there, but do them like we did them, gently. These are humans that we're talking about that have lives and hopes and dreams and families, not something on the street. So have a little class.
And
Let's do it together.
I follow Peter Free's dog's account on Twitter.
You're weird.
Hey, I follow David Duchovny's
Am I weird,
dog.
or is he weird for having the account?
I follow
both
David
weird.
Duchovny's dog.
Okay.
Well,
So-
that's David Duchovny's dog, though. That's understandable. That one's understandable.
Rick Duchovny is the cutest dog ever.
It's like if Jeff Goldblum's dog had an account, I'd be all over that. I bet that dog...
would be a cat guy.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
pretty
right.
sure.
You're right. So Warframe, speaking of some other free-to-play games in a positive way now, they had a hell of a week at TennoCon. The first big piece of news, obviously, Q, was Warframe dropping out of nowhere onto the Nintendo Switch. Kaboom, you can now Tenno on the go, which I think needs to be copyrighted by me immediately because I think Tenno on the go is just perfect. And you know what? This is Tamika, somebody we know for PR for Warframe. If I see that somewhere and I don't have a check in the mailbox, we're going to have problems. So Tenno on the go with the Nintendo. Oh my God, Mike. Why aren't you working PR? The Nintendo Switch. Boom, it's out. You can go play it on the go. And one important thing to note here, unlike Fortnite, it is not cross-play, so you'll be having your own Nintendo Switch account there. We reached out on this to PR for Warframe to say, hey, any anticipation of Sony not playing nice with Nintendo like they did with Warframe? Knowing that the accounts work a little differently, right? An Epic Games account is a full, a service with Epic Games, and this is exclusively for Warframe. They did not reply. I haven't seen any news. I think we would have by now if there were some of those. But I think it's also worth noting, Jason, because there's no cross-play. You can't jump on your PC character to your Sony character, back over to your Switch character, and have all that progression. That maybe it's less of a big deal anyway, if it were such a thing. What were your thoughts about it coming to the Switch, though, Jason? I didn't see this one coming. I would have said, nah, there's too much to that game to be on the Switch on the go.
I don't think so. I think Warframe it's really ascendant. It's a game that's everyone's talking about now, especially the last couple of years or so. And I'm not surprised that they're branching out a bit more. I mean, like I said, they're already on console. They're on the PS4. Are they on Xbox? Xbox One?
I don't know. Yes, I think so.
Okay, well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if they're on all those...
Yes.
And Warframe, too, is that kind of thing where it seems like you can go in, do a dungeon in, 10, 15 minutes, or if you're one of those crazy speedrunner guys, like 3.5 minutes. Seems like it'd be pretty good for a portable system, so I can definitely... I'm not that surprised to see this happen.
Q, your thoughts?
I think you were kind of getting at a different point, though, right? Like, there's just more in the game than you would expect on the Switch. That's the way I interpreted it.
That was more the way I was looking at it, that the game was more in-depth, and because to be honest, I own a Nintendo Switch. I would never think of playing Warframe on the Switch. Yeah, I do like the idea of portability, but I am so far down the road with both my PC and PlayStation 4 character, which I hated having to do it over there, that I would never do this a third time.
Right, but I mean, you do have people that don't do PC gaming and don't own a
Right.
PlayStation
Oh, absolutely.
4.
Absolutely.
So this is perfect for, for them.
And they haven't
to
ruled it
have
out. They just said not yet. They're looking at it.
But because I actually kind of caught the Titto Live thing. Like, I saw people were talking about it, so I went over there and watched it, and it was actually kind of cute when they came out, because they're sitting up there on stage. I don't know the devs' names, I'm sorry, but one of them is sitting there playing the Switch, and everybody else is like, hey, we're doing a thing here, and he just hops down off the stage and turns around to everybody and is like, and the whole audience is just like, holy crap. Like, their faces just went, you know, they like lit up, and it was so hilarious. And I mean, they probably should have figured that was what he was doing, but because it was that was the happiest group of people ever, I swear to God. But I mean, I think it's cool that they did it on there. As far as like the playability, I don't have a Switch, so I don't really know how well it adapts to games with more, as it were. But I mean, I think that these, you know, team shootery kind of things are always good for something that, you know, that people want, you know, because now they can just take it and go play it, you know, while other people are playing it. And I think it's going to be a nice, fun thing for Switch players.
I'm going to check it out on the Switch. I'm not going to play it there myself because, like I said, I have 2 accounts that are already beefy to the point that I don't want to start over. But I am going to jump in, Q, to, like you just said, check it out and see spec-wise how it runs. Is it smooth? You know, does it feel good to play on the Switch, whether it's on the screen or on the go? And the Switch owners came in at just the right time because not only did the Sacrifice launch on PC, that latest update about a month ago, but it's now also available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. So you do need to get into the Sacrifice. You do need to complete some stuff. Yeah, specifically some very key story elements. Second Dream, War Within, Chains of Horror, stuff like that. A couple more, but Switch players, welcome. You have a ton of shit waiting for you. And Jason, there's some new shit coming down the road, which looks even spicier. What is it?
Yeah, it's like they announced their expansion, Fortuna, which they talked about a bit, being like a more open world thing. And then they announced another expansion coming later called Railjack, which is going to be, as one site that I kind of...
That's kind of its code name right now, right?
Yeah, it might not be the real name eventually, but it sounds cool. I like it. Railjack. And it's going to be where you're basically on a starship, and you're kind of like co-crewing it with other members, other players in the game. So that's totally exactly how I thought of Warframe 5 years ago, playing Star Trek in Warframe.
Taking over capital ships, and they're touting that as more than just a new mission type, which I'm all in favor of anyway. But with customization and other people there, I mean, damn, this thing is getting big. And hey, by the way, just as, you know, recently as like, what, 12 days ago, we were talking about Warframe is one of the top-selling free-to-play games on Steam, Jason.
We were?
I don't know if you saw this.
Oh, we weren't talking about it. I saw it, sure, but I was like, we were talking about it. But
no,
yeah.
we didn't talk about it, but on the show or anything. But I think we'll just throw it in here since we're talking about it. It's making a ton of bank.
Let's see if I can find that thing. Steam put out its top selling games here. The top selling games of 2018 so far. So I guess through June, it lists 12 games in the platinum category. And looking here, I see Warframe and Dota 2 are both the only free-to-play games in that category. Now, I don't know if they're ordered in any particular way within this category, but Warframe is the first one listed. I don't know if that means it's the biggest selling game, if it's still making the most money out of everything there, but yeah, it's at least among the top 12 games on Steam.
And this isn't the first time we've seen them there.
No, yeah, they're there like whenever they do like the full year list. Whenever Valve does that, they're usually up near the top as well.
Everything's coming up Digital Extremes, Q. Good for them. Good for them.
I mean, aren't they one of the companies that we've talked about before? Like they just kind of do their free-to-play stuff right, and make it to where the players just really actually want to spend money with them.
Oh, it's so tempting. It's one of those games,
instead of being
though.
Angry about it, like
yeah, but it does a lot of like Neverwintery type things. Not with like the loot boxes and stuff. They don't deal with that to the extent that Neverwinter does. But they definitely do the. I'd really like to spend $4 and get that right now, and not have to do 17 missions and wait 3 days. So,
we had other Digital Extremes news this week too, right?
Do we?
Amazing Eternals.
Oh my God! Yeah, you want to talk about that? That's hysterical.
Just real briefly, yeah. The guys at Digital Extremes came out and said that the big reason they didn't finish up Amazing Eternals is because they saw how badly Lawbreakers did when it launched.
Lawbreakers just ruining things for everyone.
Pretty much, yeah.
And Cliffy B takes his studio down and projects from other studios. Jesus. And that's the first time I've called him Cliffy B in a long time. Because, Q, you're right. If you don't want to be called Cliffy B anymore, change your Twitter handle. Let's slide over, do the weekly bombs, get the hell out of here. I'm going to give mine first. A dub bomb to a bug that shuts a game down indefinitely. You gotta love that. So old school RuneScape is shut down indefinitely due to a internal gold kind of exploit. It wasn't really an exploit. It was a bug that was causing items to be converted into gold at like max gold levels. So totally wrecked their own economy while they were releasing information. And we saw reported on that RuneScape has made over 800 million in its entire lifetime. This is one aspect of the game that the internal economy screwed it up, and it ain't going to be making anything for a little while. So I think it's funny. Dub bomb. I'm sure it sucks for RuneScape employees, and I'm sorry to be laughing at the expense, but it's a funny bug. Come on. You'll be able to laugh about it someday. Trust me. Go ahead, Q.
This is going to be a mixed A-bomb, D-bomb. The bomb that it's finally there, Secret World Legends finally put in two things that we've been missing on our event that just haven't been dropping for us for whatever reason. A-bomb for the fact that the event is almost over and we're just now getting that fixed.
Yeah, that seemed really, really bizarre. Jason, go ahead.
I'm actually looking at the RuneScape update page where they were talking about this. It is apparently back online.
Oh,
they fixed it and it's back online now. Yeah.
Man, why use the word indefinitely if it's going to be like a day? That's just
it definitely means we have no friggin' idea when it's coming back. Basically.
Yeah, now I'm A-bomb to a bug that shuts a game down indefinitely. Go ahead, Jason.
Sure. I'm going to give an A-bomb to this narrative I keep seeing over and over again. Again, we'll get the digital streams and lawbreakers.
This.
We're going to get those mixed together again. People are like, well, the reason that, one of the issues lawbreakers had, one of their goals was to be, to start small and get big, just like Warframe did. Okay. If you look at Warframe,
then that's something Cliff Bleszinski put out there himself with Warframe as the example.
In its first full month on Steam, had about 10,000 concurrent players, average, like whole time. And even for the first, year or so, it was averaging right around 10,000, 8, 9, 12, something like that. Lawbreakers peaked at around 3,000. That was the most they ever had at any one time, and immediately went down.
I love that.
They are not even comparable.
You hate that narrative.
Warframe did not.
And then Cliff Bleszinski used it in an article, and I heard your head explode when he was like, "We're in it for the marathon, not the sprint. A lot like Warframe, where we build a dedicated small community," and I could just hear.
Just because Warframe was indie and was relatively unknown among the big mass people, Nintendo didn't have any idea who they were. They were going to put them on Switch, 2 months after they came out. But they were still, even if they only had that number of players now, they'd still be about number 50 on Steam. They'd still be a top 100 game and be really, really good. Of course, they're number 3 or something right now, but they'd still be good even if they never grew beyond their initial month. So, no.
From the viewers, and we only have a few bombs and question of the week replies this week because we knew our topics were going to run a little late, so forgive us. Please be sure to comment on this episode, and we'll get as many as we can in next week. From Hydrix Sky Shadow, I have a dub bomb for Paladins. While I don't enjoy the game, it's in no way a bad game. It's just not my cup of tea. From 1 to 10, it's a 7.5 for me. But it's the only game my friends agreed to play outside of Fortnite and CSGO, so I need to give it a huge dub bomb just for that. It's just that I despise both other games. I almost popped a blood vessel out of rage, but because I'm not the kind of person that lashes out just out of frustration, it builds up fast. You could say it's fine, just focus on the game. So many times before your neurons start to commit suicide. I know that stupidity is omnipresent in all games, but I hate losing when it's not my fault. I mean, how the hell do you manage to lose a fight? Machine gun 150 ammo versus a Leroy asshole with a knife from almost 25 meters. And that sounds like exactly the type of one-on-one I would lose, Jason. Go ahead, take the next one.
Mr. Sanchez 159 says, A-bomb to what they are doing to the Horde. Sylvanas is just an evil character. Now they're going to need to bend over backward to redeem her. When's an alliance leader going to be the big bad instead of the Horde ones? What? Is this some new free-to-play game I've never heard of before? I don't know what they're talking about.
Q, wrap it up.
Someone next to me is shaking their head, too, at this.
Squeezy, to bomb the FIFA World Cup. Best week ever with almost every farming spot empty and no one trying to steal your mobs.
And speaking of World Cup action, ours continues on MMOBomb.com as we fight through the final groups to determine semifinals. So get your voting on now if you haven't voted. I think, Group H is up right now, isn't it?
Yeah, the last group in the group stage, and we're going to do the elimination matches starting tomorrow or like now as you are seeing this video. So,
question of the week last week, are there any smaller CCGs, TCGs out there that you stick with? How about just smaller games in general? Are you part of like the 20 people on a small game Steam charts? Hydric Sky Shadow also had feedback here, says, there's a game I paid for that is known as Minimum. The game doesn't even justify the name. And I play it because I want to somehow justify the money I lost. But there is no one playing this pixelated shit. But as far as games I do enjoy, that is Tabletopia, but that is a game that appeals to very few players. This is a game with almost no animation, a huge amount of rules, and absolutely no way of playing alone, and almost every single game requires you to think, so it's understandable why it has a very narrow player base. We'll have to check that one out, Jason. Go ahead, take the next one.
I'm looking at this. I see Tabletopia has about 20 players average at a time, and the other Minimum has about 1. But I do remember when Minimum was first announced, Spunkify was all over it for some reason. He thought it was a big deal. I just remember that. But anyway, CGBJAI, I'm not going to try to pronounce how that's supposed to be. So there's a game I've been playing on and off for years named Rumble Fighter. It's been passed around a few times from OG Planet to Games Campus and now to Red Fox. And it's a Steam release now. Sometimes I wonder why I still play it. It's a fighting game that uses a scroll system, bringing variety in gameplay, different combos, and things that make it unique. The game is fun, it's interesting, the things you can do, but almost since 2010 it's been buggy. There's things about the game that just don't work and haven't been fixed and don't look like it ever will be fixed. Even to this point, the players assume it's part of the gameplay and just work around it. On top of that, the game is admittedly a little pay to win. A lot of the scrolls are behind a paywall with few events on getting them. But the huge kicker is, since it's a fighting game, the community is very toxic. This game sounds like it has everything going for it. It's buggy, it's pay to win, nobody plays, people who do play are toxic. My God, this sounds amazing. Whether it's using megaphones to alert the whole server that, quote, this player is trash, kick them from your rooms, or, lol, I beat you easy, kid, 9-0, kill yourself. I really would love to see this game grow. I hope the publisher-developer team can bring it back to its former glory back in 2007 when I was young and played it daily after school. Wow, sounds amazing.
Bring it back to its glory. Okay.
Glory days.
I'm gonna
see if I can.
2007.
Yeah, you're looking for Rumble Fighter.
Yeah.
Let's see where that's at.
It only has a Steam release since like January of 2017. Has peaked at 20 players.
Oh, and see, CGBJ is one of them.
There you go. Yep, it's one of those 20.
Go ahead, Q.
Squeezy, the only games I played that had a small population were either single player or co-op, local or invite only. If I'm playing a multiplayer game, that means I want to play with different people and not with the same Three Stooges every time. Those Three Stooges feelings are very hurt.
They are. They are. Kinetic Fetus. Question of the week. Let's see. Warframe, Path of Exile, and for experimental purposes, Fortnite. So that's a hard no. I've played games that had small populations in the past, and they were great because the people that played them genuinely cared about the game. I guess I'm a popular game scrub now, but hey, at least I'm a loyal popular game scrub. Except not to Fortnite. Could take a long walk off of a short pier. Go ahead, finish it up, Jason.
But the thing is, you're probably building that pier out as you go.
Right.
It's Fortnite. William Alban says, if by small game you mean 20 million players, it definitely doesn't fit the question. But I am playing since February an indie MMORPG called Villagers and Heroes, and I love it a whole lot. It's free to play, cross-platform, PC, Android, and iOS, and the community is pretty nice. It's a very nice game. We've written about that occasionally.
Yeah, we cover Villagers and Heroes.
Let me see. Let's see what that's up to on Steam. It has 70 players at the moment. Peaks around 100 or so. So that's a little.
And that's just on Steam.
Reasonable.
To be fair, Villagers and Heroes Q, when we have written about it, it is geared more towards the mobile side.
Okay.
It's not one that I would expect a lot of people to be playing on PC. Question of the week this week. No. Not what you think it's going to be. Not the obvious question you thought it was going to be, and you've already typed your answer. I hope you didn't submit it. The question of the week is, forget limitations of any sort. What free-to-play PC game would you just love to see on the Nintendo Switch, and why? See, I'm going to throw a little curveball in there, Jason. Just a little, mix it up a little bit. So what PC free-to-play game would you like to see on the Switch, and why? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. While you're there, don't forget your weekly bombs. Da bomb for something good, A bomb for something bad, and your questions, comments for our panel. Until next week, Q, where can everybody find you?
Hanging out on Twitter at Quitland.
Jason.
On Twitter at Winter Informal, streaming twitch.tv/JasonWinter, where I've been getting into some scary games lately, so come and watch and see me not really get too scared, because I'm usually pretty good about that sort of thing, but occasionally...
Occasionally, you poop a little. Mike Byrne, a.k.a. Magic
That is not
Man.
shown on the stream, though. I don't have a butt cam.
You can follow me personally on Twitter at magicman1, shown below there, but more importantly, while you're there, follow at MMOBomb so you can get all the news, World Cup of free-to-play action, free-to-play cast, first looks, articles, editorials, interviews, and more. Until next week, stay safe. See you on the servers.